Joe has a terrible history in the black community.
If that's the case, how did yesterday just happen? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, I woke up today, and the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning as a ritual is to check the Middle America message boards on Facebook. If you want to join, dear listener, it's very, very simple, free of charge, facebook.com/America Middle. And you will be in the Middle America portal where you will see the greats like Izzy and Matthew Maeda, among others, commenting. And one of the comments from the great Izzy was, how in the world did Joe Biden win over so many black voters considering his historical record of black voters with black people versus Bernie Sanders' historical record with black people? One of them was trying to get us off of buses and trying to end desegregation efforts, and the other one was getting thrown in jail. That would be Biden, and we'll show you in a second. And the other one, Bernie, was getting thrown in jail because he was on the right side of history and actually put his money where his mouth was for the black community where he lived. Now keep in mind, taking part in civil rights and standing up for the marginalized during Bernie Sanders' time, when he's getting carted off here, as you can see, is not like today. Today, you say something about black people or LGBT people, it just gets you, kudos points and people clap for you and say you're woke or whatever. Back then, white folks were getting lynched and their houses Molotov cocktailed. And presidents were getting assassinated for supporting black folks. So Bernie actually put his money where his mouth was when things were actually not popular and could have cost him his life. And at the same time, you had Biden trying to keep black folks off of buses and working with folks that he even said out of his own mouth were avowed racists in order to accomplish those ends. But what did we see yesterday? Here's NPR. Biden also performed Sanders with black voters in Texas. The intro video is a black guy from Texas, where they make up about 1/5 of the Democratic Party primary electorate. Exit polls show Biden had the support of roughly 60% of black voters in the state. Sanders had 17. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, 60% of the black voters supported Joe Biden to only 17% for Sanders. So one guy has been an absolute disaster for us, and the other guy has actually put his money where his mouth was and only got 17% support. And so my dear friend Izzy was saying, how is this possible? What is happening? Please explain it to me. Now, the shortest answer of this is something I've said over and over again, and I don't think any YouTuber is going to say it because they can't, but I'll say it again. The black vote, the black demographic in America is the most easily manipulated and ignorant voting bloc in America. Those are facts. 100% true. The black voting bloc in America is the most ignorant and easily manipulatable group of people in the United States of America. This proves it. This proves it. But who do I blame, aside from just the ignorance and the silliness of the black electorate? Who do I blame mostly for this? Who do I hold mostly responsible for this debacle that happened yesterday, particularly with black voters and Mr. Bernie Sanders? Now, I'm looking at NPR. Above that, here's what they talked about in the other states. Biden picked up victories in 4 southern states, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama, largely on the back of his support among black voters. On the back of the black voter. That's pretty ironic if you think about it historically, especially in the South. In Alabama and Virginia, Biden had the support of 7 in 10 black voters. That's 70%. In Tennessee and North Carolina, Biden had the support of more than half of the black voters. Everybody else had to go for the scraps. So who do I blame for this sweep? You know who I blame? I blame a guy primarily named Bernard Sanders. That's who I blame. You know, Bernie has no problem calling people racist. You don't believe me? Let's check out a montage, shall we?
That we have a president of the United States who is a racist.
Trump is a pathological liar and a racist.
We now have a president of the United States who is a racist.
There's a little montage. President Trump is a racist. Racist, racist, racist. That's all he says over and over again. And, of course, I've been saying this. You can go back on the archived footage of Middle America. I've been saying this over and over and over again. Every single president we've ever had has been a racist. Mr. Sanders, Abraham Lincoln was a racist. Mr. Sanders, what have I been saying about this whole race and racism silliness with politicians? What I've said is I don't care about their rhetoric. What I care about is their policy. Why did Mr. Sanders have no problem calling Donald Trump a racist, even though Mr. Trump has passed no anti-black racial policies? We've already discussed this. Black unemployment is the lowest it's ever been since the late 60s. He signed the First Step Act into law and championed by the Kardashians and the Kanye West et al., etc., which say what you want about it, but it's the first step in reversing the racist crime bill that was signed in 1994, which we will talk about later on in the video. Here's what happened, Izzy, and the rest of you. Here's what happened. And I love all of you, but here's what happened. I kept trying to tell y'all that this silly idea that Donald Trump is the biggest, most nastiest racist on the face of the earth was a lie. And I've been trying to tell y'all that you had a person in your midst, Joe Biden, who actually was instrumental in passing racist policies that did massive injury to the black community. That Mr. Biden is 30 times worse than President Trump for black people, and that Mr. Trump has actually affected black people in the last 4 years in a very positive manner. I've been trying to tell you that. But what happened? The left spun this giant yarn that Mr. Trump was the most racist individual, the most racist president we've ever had. In one of the clips, Bernie says, I can't believe I have to say this in my day and age, but we've got the most... Mr. Sanders, you were alive when Richard Nixon was alive, and it's a documented fact that the war on drugs was initiated primarily to go after black people. Nixon's own aide said it. You had the Clintons. You're going to tell me that Mr. Trump was the most racist person we've ever had? See, this is what happens. This is what the DNC has done. It's the same thing I shot in the other video. The DNC hyperbolized how horrible Donald Trump was and I've got a good friend that is completely obsessed with anything Donald Trump, can't see any good in him, and because of that, he eats everything up that the DNC tells him. So the DNC told you that this guy was a proto-racist, he was Hitler, he was worse than Hitler, yada, 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 yada. So when you had an actual racist who actually hurt us in your midst, nobody called him out on it. Kamala Harris had one little thing about, I was the girl on the bus, and that was the rest of it. Where are the multiple montage clips that I can present to you where Bernie Sanders confronts Joe Biden on his racist policies? Where is the passages where I can show where Bernie Sanders says this dude is a racist? Where are the commercials in the Deep South where you still have Confederate flags running all over the place? Where are the commercials from paid for by Bernie Sanders, or I am Bernie Sanders, I approve this message, where he calls out Biden for his racism? You know where they are? I don't know where they are. They're in another dimension. It didn't get done. So Bernie had no problem calling Trump a racist, even though he couldn't produce any empirical data that demonstrates that Trump did anything policy-wise or even in the way that he runs his administration that is anti-black. He did this with no empirical data, and yet he gave Biden a free pass and wouldn't call him out on his racism. That's how it happened, Izzy. Let's go down memory lane, shall we? Here is CNN talking about Mr. Biden. This was last year.
What's less known is how he followed the lead of some of the Senate's most fervent segregationists. In a series of never-before-published letters reviewed by CNN, the strength of Biden's opposition to busing comes into sharper focus. On March 25, 1977, Biden wrote, "My bill strikes at the heart of the injustice of court-ordered busing. It prohibits the federal courts from disrupting our educational system." Biden sought and received support from Mississippi Senator James Eastland, the Democratic chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and a leading symbol of Southern resistance to desegregation. He frequently spoke of blacks as, quote, an inferior race. Biden reflected on that era earlier this year.
They're a bunch of racists. There was, James O. Eastland, Mississippi, Strom Thurmond, and so on. There were 9 guys who were in the caucus that were, I ran against in the civil rights movement.
But he did not say that Eastland and others were partners on several of Biden's anti-busing bills. On June 30th, 1977, Biden wrote, "Dear Mr. Chairman, I want you to know that I very much appreciate your help during this week's committee meeting in attempting to bring my anti-busing legislation to a vote." Then in 1978, Biden again asked Eastland to put his anti-busing bill before the full Senate, writing, "Your participation in floor debate would be welcomed."
So in the 70s, in the late 70s, Mr. Biden, and in that little middle clip, he named Eastland and all these guys as racists. Meanwhile, he knew good and well, maybe he forgot, that 30 years prior, he had been marshaling those very same racists. You see the guy with the Confederate flag in the back. Those very racists to help him with the injustice of the busing bill, having those Negroes being on the bus with our children. That was Mr. Biden. He got a complete free pass from Mr. Sanders. Not a single commercial, not a thought, nothing. But Trump is the racist. Again, I don't care if Trump or Biden or you or anybody said something that's racist. I don't care. I am a Christian. I believe in original sin. So it doesn't surprise me if somebody says something racist. I really, truly do not care. What I care about, though, is the policies that you enact. And this man fought tooth and nail and went hand in hand with avowed racists to take care of this busing issue. Those are facts. That was in the 70s. That was in the 70s. Okay, fine. Let's fast forward. Let's jump in our time machine, shall we? And jump to 1994. 1994. The crime bill. Let's see what Uncle Joe had to say about the crime bill, shall we?
Or a portion of them will become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
These predators, this is the crime bill. They're beyond the pale, Madam President. This is Joe Biden speaking to Mrs. Clinton at the time for his mega crime bill that he was talking that has created a mass incarceration glut that has affected blacks and Latinos to this day, which we will hear about in 1 second, from Mayor de Blasio, another Democrat, by the way. Here you have Mr. Biden talking about how we're predators. Do you notice what he said? He said, yeah, we kind of created the circumstance in which these ghetto kids started doing all this stuff, but who cares? We got to get them off the street. They're beyond the pale. We don't want them touching our families. Madam President. Does the term predator sound familiar to you? Oh, that's right.
They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
First, we have to bring these super predators to heel. You see what just happened? Biden said it on the Senate floor, and not to be outdone by Biden, because Biden kept saying that these guys are predators, she said super predators. which at least Bernie had the decency to call a racist term back in 2016. But again, there were no ads telling the black community about Hillary Clinton. Of course, black men didn't show up and vote for Hillary Clinton. And there are reasons for that, but I'm pretty certain that black men are going to show up and vote for Mr. Biden over Bernie. I can tell you that. That's already happened, obviously. Obviously. So, Mr. Biden was instrumental in the crime bill, and he told you what he thought of us in the crime bill. These are predators. Yeah, we created the situation, sure, but it doesn't matter. We're not going to forgive them. We're just going to put them away because these people, they're just beyond the pale. They can't be rehabilitated. Throw them in jail. Did you know that in the crime bill you had there was an incentive per state that if the person did about 80% of their assigned sentence, that the state would get a little kickback? That was part of the crime bill. There you go. The prison industrial complex. Now, I've been saying this consistently. The crime bill did not create mass incarceration. It codified it and furthered it into law. That whole conspiracy had already started with the war on drugs, etc., where Nixon's aide specifically stated it. Here, let me get you the quote, dear listener. Here it is, CNN. One of Richard Nixon's top advisors and a key figure in the Watergate scandal said the war on drugs was created as a political tool to fight blacks and hippies, according to a 22-year-old interview recently published in Harper's Magazine. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You see, if you're an anti-war leftist and you start getting squeezed by the government, you can conform and have the government leave you alone. But if you're black, you can't do any such thing. The war on drugs, started in the late 60s, was designed to deal with us. Anti-war leftists, sure, and black people. And once you got out of the 60s and the 70s, and once we got out of Vietnam, there was no more anti-war movement to go after, which meant the war on drugs was specifically meant to target black folks. Then you had the cocaine era in the 80s, and then you had, which, by the way, the CIA admitted that they had a hand in the crack cocaine in the black neighborhoods. And then you had, in the 90s, the early 90s, 1993, 94, the crime bill, which was basically the logical ramification of those two actions, which completely and totally decimated the black community. And and by the way, did you see the tacit admission from both Biden and Clinton that they were the ones, their class of people were the ones that created the situation, where he said, yep, we abandoned them and we put them in terrible situations, but that doesn't mean we're going to forgive them for committing crimes. And then you had Hillary talk about, hey, look, man, how they got there, whatever, doesn't matter now. Let's just put these animals in jail. They need to be brought to heel. They need to be broken, like the old slave master. They just beat you till they break you. That's what she said. That's what she said. And Biden was saying, she was saying that nonsense in an interview. Biden was saying that craziness on the Senate floor. Did you remember that Sanders commercial where that happened? I don't remember that, Bernie, because Bernie's too busy trying to convince all of us that Trump is the most racist president we've ever had and the most racist legislator we've ever had. Okay, well, here's Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City. Listen to what he has to say, if you don't want to take my word for it.
Look at the fact that the bill had a disproportionate impact on African Americans and Latinos, and again had a horrible impact on families that we're still feeling the effects of right now. That bill was a huge mistake, and we got to be clear about New York City. We are safer every year. We're the safest big city in America because we moved away from mass incarceration. We're arresting a lot fewer people. We arrested 150,000 fewer people in 2018 than 5 years earlier, and we got safer. We're not punishing people and trying to send them away. We're actually trying to work with communities, particularly to help our young people lead productive lives. We're not treating them like predators. We're treating them like human beings. And it's making a huge difference, and that's making us safer.
Oh, you mean when you treat people, a disenfranchised group of people, when you treat them like human beings and not animals? And by the way, calling us predators is worse than calling us animals. A puppy is an animal. Fido's an animal. A kitten is an animal. But when you call someone a predator is a dangerous animal. And what that does is it activates the fear mechanism. And there is nobody more hateful on this planet than a fearful person. Why do you think I've got an avowed neo-Nazi in this forum? I'm not going to mention his name. You'll probably see him in the comment section here. Why do you think I don't care that he's in my forum? Why do you think I haven't blocked him? Because I know that that individual is just full of fear. See, there really is not much difference between hatred and fear as far as how people act in the real world. If you can convince people that there is a block of people that pose a threat to them, they will do the most hateful, evil things imaginable. So the term predator is a very important term, and they knew what they were doing when they used that terminology, and so did de Blasio. That's why he said, we're not treating these people like predators. How about we just treat them like human beings? How about we actually talk to people and work with them instead of throwing them in jail? And wouldn't you know it, New York City then at the time was the safest, biggest city in America, because they stopped treating people, mostly people of color, like predatory animals who need to be brought to heel. So here's the thing, Izzy. You guys, and I'm gonna say you guys because you're a Bernie person. You got to go down with the ship. You guys gave Joe Biden a complete free pass, and now after Super Tuesday, it is way too late to spin the yarn that he's been a racist and that Bernie hasn't been. Sorry. Bernie stood on the stage side by side with this man over and over and over again and never once called him a racist. Not once. He has no problem running around calling Trump a racist, but he says nothing about Biden and his racism, which is why I've said over and over again that folks on the left don't care about the black struggle. Now, I would say that Mr. Sanders has absolutely done things in his past that made it clear that he did care about the black struggle, but the fact that he kept his mouth shut about Biden's obvious and blatant racism tells you everything you need to know. He began using race as a chip to go after Trump. He did. He commoditized racism and politicized it. If he was sticking to the principle of I'm calling out every racist, then he would have not let Biden have any quarter in any of these debates. And the closest person to it was Kamala. Those are facts. He ignored it. And the one time he was even accusing Biden of corruption had nothing to do with racism, and then he walked it back the next day. So unfortunately, Sanders has fallen victim to trying to walk in lockstep with the DNC. Oh, we can't go after Biden. We can't go after Biden. We got to say that Trump is the big racist. Trump is a big racist, when in the matter of fact, it is Biden who's been more harmful to us in the black community. What do you think is going to happen now that Biden wins the nomination? You know what's going to happen? You're going to see more commercials that have that clip of Mr. Biden calling us super predators and arguing for mass incarceration of black people. And then right beside that, you're going to see this.
I'm free to hug my family. I'm free to start over. This is the greatest day of my life. My heart is just bursting with gratitude. I want to thank President Donald John Trump. Woo!
That's what's going to happen. Now, that wouldn't have worked very well against Bernie, because what's he going to do? Show Bernie getting arrested for the sake of black folk while he was denying people apartments in New York? But this is going to work very well against Biden, because Biden has a history, a documented history of being a racist, working with racists, and saying horrible, racist, xenophobic things about black people that styled us as animals that need to be caged and put to heel. And now you're going to get this all through October, November, and you deserve it. I think Bernie lost his way. I really do. He lost his way, and I think Bernie had an identity crisis. After 2016, he kissed the ring of the DNC. He endorsed Clinton when he knew that Clinton was everything that he was against, and he lost his way. He began flip-flopping on a whole bunch of things. And then he stayed silent when he should have spoke, and he spoke when he should have stayed silent. The fact of the matter is, all the nonsense about him talking about how racist Trump is just a plain lie as far as legislation goes. The only thing that affects people directly to the degree on the national federal level is legislation, not rhetoric. And the facts are, Trump has been great for the black community. Trump has done more for the black community in 4 years than Obama did in 8. Those are facts. And we saw the polls about 3 months ago where it had 34% of black people going for Trump. I guarantee you that Trump is going to have a better split among blacks in Texas than Sanders did. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you that. I'm not saying he's going to beat Biden among blacks in Texas. What I'm saying is he's definitely going to beat that 17% number. He doesn't need to beat Biden among blacks in Texas. These are the facts. We went along with the orange man bad narrative. We went along with the whole Russia thing, and that turned against him. Do you notice the pattern? He went along with the Russiagate nonsense, and the same apparatus that went after Trump for Russiagate went after him. He went along with the impeachment nonsense. Same thing. Don't you see what happened this week? They all coalesced, led by Barack Hussein Obama, to make sure that he would not win the nomination. Then he went along with this Trump is the worst racist of all time silliness, so that gave Biden a complete free pass. He was standing on stage with a guy who has literally written the book on the destruction of the black man and the black family in America and said nothing. You deserve what you get, man. You deserve what you get. And if Bernie starts throwing out these, oh, well, Sanders is a racist, I forgot to tell you that stuff. Sorry. Why didn't you say it in the last 9-10 debates then, Bernie? Why didn't you say it with the conviction that you had, at the beginning of the video? He's completely lost his way. He really, really has. He's trying to straddle the fence. In the Old Testament, there's a phrase, halting between two opinions. He tried to straddle the fence, and the DNC allowed him to do so, knowing full well that they had no intention whatsoever of giving this man a fair shake. They coalesced all these establishment goons around Biden, and it worked like a charm. He had Clyburn gave him the nod over there in the Carolinas, and then everything fell into place for Biden after that. Now we've got a Biden versus Trump runoff. I mean, God forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Biden could not tell the difference between his wife and his sister yesterday. This is a guy that you're going up against Donald Trump. All right. Hillary Clinton was the most qualified, mentally sharp candidate I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. And Mr. Trump made mincemeat out of her with his theatrics. And now you're going to put Biden up against this guy. Okay. Put Biden up against a strong economy. Put Biden up against his record with black folks. And we'll see what happens. Unbelievable stuff. This is what happens when you play the game and you don't stay. This is a case study in staying with your integrity and how much you lose when you don't. For some reason, Sanders never really figured out that the establishment hates him and that they would find no compromise or anything good about him. And for some reason, Mr. Sanders could not figure out that he and Trump were being given literally the same treatment by the same group of people. Here we are. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America. We are the media. Till next time, guys. And I'm a Sanders fan, by the way. If he was on the ballot, I would vote for him. But he won't be.